The legendary comedy Police Academy has brought laughter to millions of viewers around the world. But behind those immortal roles are heartbreaking losses. In this video, we will look back at the journeys and lives of 14 Police Academy stars who have passed away, to remember the faces that made up the legend of the time. Bubba Smith as Moses Hightower. Charles Aaron Bubba Smith was born on February 28, 1945 in Texas. At 39, he became an unforgettable character to audiences around the world as Moses Hightower, a tall, gentle officer in the Police Academy from Part 1 to Part 6. Besides his comedic personality, Bubba was an NFL football legend, being selected first overall in the 1977 draft and winning Super Bowl with the Baltimore Colts. But behind the sporting and movie glory was a life of quiet suffering. Bubba remained unmarried and lived alone in Los Angeles, battling long-term physical damage from years of brutal sports collisions. Chronic injuries led to a dependence on painkillers and eventually a spiral into depression. Illness had worn away his body, while the image of a steel hero became a psychological burden he could not shake off. On August 3, 2011, Bubba Smith was found dead alone at the age of 66. The cause? Acute drug poisoning and heart failure. An autopsy later confirmed he had CTE, a degenerative brain disease caused by repeated head trauma common in competitive athletes. His heart was twice its normal weight at the time of his death, a poignant symbol of the price paid for sporting glory. Marion Ramsey as Laverne Hooks. Marion Ramsey was born on May 10, 1947 in Philadelphia. At 37, she made her mark in film history as Officer Laverne Hooks, the timid but surprisingly courageous policewoman in Police Academy, from Season 1 through Season 6. Her soft, high-pitched voice became iconic, making Hooks a character audiences would never forget. But the role ultimately became a gilded cage, trapping Ramsey in a single on-screen identity. Too boxed in, Ramsey was rarely cast in other roles. Hollywood couldn't look beyond her squeaky voice in Police Academy, ignoring the fact that she was also a talented stage actress performing on Broadway and touring nationally in Hello, Dolly. Her personal life mirrored her professional disappointment. After a failed marriage, Marion withdrew from relationships altogether. Childless and without any family, she lived alone in her home in Los Angeles. In her final years, Marion's health rapidly declined. Although the specific cause of death was not released, she suffered a brief illness before passing away on January 7, 2021, at the age of 73. Close friend Nell Carter once revealed that Marion was a very private person, often hiding her pain behind a smile. Her estimated net worth at the time of her death was only about $500,000, a modest figure compared to the emotional impact she left on audiences. But the greatest tragedy was not material. It was being stuck in a role that was so successful that she never had the chance to truly see herself for who she was. George Gaines as Eric Lassard. George Gaines was born on May 16, 1970, in Helsinki, a Russian-born Dutch talent who served in the Royal Netherlands Navy during World War II before becoming a U.S. citizen. He was 67 when he captured the hearts of audiences around the world as Commander Eric Lassard, the bumbling but lovable commander of Police Academy throughout the 7 seasons. With his deep voice, innocent expressions, and humorous but meaningful antics, he became the soul of the series, an irreplaceable role. But behind his illustrious career and endearing personality was a life full of profound chapters. Gaines served in Sicily, Anzio, and the Adriatic, a history that Hollywood rarely mentions. He had a long and happy marriage to actress Alan Ann McCleary, but tragedy struck in 1989 when their son, Matthew, a former Olympic kayaker, died in a car accident in India. It was a loss that left a deep wound in Gaines, and many believe he became more withdrawn after that moment. In his later years, his health declined, his eyesight deteriorated, his memory faded, but he retained the charm and kindness that characterized both him and Commander Lassard. On February 15, 2016, George Gaines passed away at his daughter's home in North Bend, Washington, at the age of 98. He left behind an estimated $2 million estate, a modest home, and millions of smiles to share with audiences around the world. David Graff as Eugene Tackleberry. Paul David Graff was born on April 16, 1950 in Zanesville, Ohio. At age 34, he made movie history with his career-defining role as Sergeant Eugene Tackleberry in Police Academy. As a gun-obsessed but fiercely loyal and devoted officer, Graff's Tackleberry became an enduring icon across 7 films. His character forever brought laughter to millions around the world. But behind his explosive humor was a life of quiet pain. Despite a steady career that included guest appearances on hit shows like Star Trek, Seinfeld, The West Wing, and Home Improvement, Graff never quite escaped the shadow of Tackleberry, a familiar face on television. He struggled with a lingering sense of powerlessness, haunted by the belief that he would always be a supporting character, never a true star. Contrary to some misinformation, David Graff has only been married once, to actress Katharine Graff in 1983. They have 2 sons together, but the constant pressure of work and the relentless pace of work often left him stressed. As an active representative of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, he has fought tirelessly for the rights of his fellow actors, but he seems to have neglected his own health. On April 7, 2001, just 9 days before his 51st birthday, David Graff died suddenly of a heart attack while attending his brother-in-law's wedding in Phoenix, Arizona. He left behind a wife, children, friends, and fans in mourning. He was buried in Forest Rose Cemetery in Ohio, the hometown where his childhood theatrical dreams had been nurtured. His estimated net worth is around $500,000. But his greatest legacy is the laughter and sincerity he brought to every role. David Graff's tragedy was not simply his early death, but also his deep frustration at being pigeonholed into a single character, despite being an actor who gave his all both in front of and behind the camera. Dar Robinson as Thug in Plaid Dar Allen. Robinson was born on March 26, 1947 in Los Angeles, growing up surrounded by trampolines, gymnastics mats, and a love of danger. At 37, he appeared in Police Academy in 1984 as a checkered-shirted thug, a small role that barely hinted at his immense legacy. With 19 world records and 21 firsts in death-defying stunts, Dar Robinson was more than just a stuntman. He was a living Hollywood legend until the day he died. Robinson was the first person to jump 700 feet from the CN Tower, fall 220 feet from the Hyatt Regency, launch a car over the rim of the Grand Canyon, and free fall from a helicopter 311 feet, all with precision calculations. He hasn't broken a bone in 13 years, but ironically, his only fatal fall wasn't even a major stunt. On November 21, 1986, on the set of $1 Million Mystery, Robinson was performing the film's main stunt. While performing a simple motorcycle chase for extras, which wasn't even a planned stunt, he lost control of his motorcycle and plunged off a cliff, dying instantly at the age of 39. The medical team left the scene believing the dangerous part of the shoot was over. His fortune was estimated at $300,000. He suffered a failed marriage and left behind 2 sons, including Sean Robinson, who followed his father into the stunt business before also dying of heart failure at a young age. Close friends recall that Dar always lived with a sense of dread about death, and in some ways he accepted it. Doug Lennox as gang leader. Douglas Joseph Lennox was born on January 21, 1938 in Canada. At the age of 46, he played the main villain in Police Academy, 1984, a gang leader with a stern, cold demeanor that left a lasting impression. In real life, Lennox is an incredibly versatile artist, actor, author, and broadcaster. He began his radio career in 1965 and quickly became one of the most familiar voices on Canadian radio before moving into film and television. He appeared in dozens of series, including The New Avengers, Cold Squad, Relic Hunter, Earth, Final Conflict, and X-Men: The Last Stand. However, despite his versatility and persistence, Lennox never landed a breakout leading role. His villainous role in Police Academy was a standout, but it was just a glimpse into a long and humble artistic journey. In addition to acting, Lennox was known for his intellect and curiosity, which he captured in his acclaimed book, Now You Know, The Big Book of Answers, where he revealed a lesser-known side of himself, one fueled by curiosity, knowledge, and a desire to understand the world. But his personal life was not as smooth. 2 failed marriages left emotional scars. According to those close to him, Lennox struggled with bouts of depression, haunted by the feeling that Hollywood had abandoned him, that his talent and dedication had been reduced to a single remembered villain. Doug Lennox died in his sleep on November 28, 20 in Toronto at the age of 77. The cause was complications from pneumonia. He left behind an estate worth about $400,000, including a modest home in Toronto, where he spent his final years in quiet solitude. He was a gifted storyteller, a memorable villain, but perhaps above all, a creative spirit the world turned away from too soon. Andrew Rubin as George Martin. Andrew Harold Rubin was born on June 22, 1946, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, to an educated Jewish family. After graduating from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, Rubin emerged as a promising face on American television, with roles in Shazam, The Jeffersons, and Hometown. But it wasn't until he was 38 that he made his mark as the charming, mischievous, womanizing George Martin in the first Police Academy film, 1984. Instead of opening the door to stardom, George Martin turned out to be the pinnacle of Rubin's career. Subsequent roles dwindled, and he was reduced to supporting roles and occasional television appearances. Fame never came as he had hoped, and Rubin gradually withdrew from the public eye, all but disappearing from Hollywood's radar. Few people knew that behind his humor and charisma was a decades-long battle with nicotine addiction, a silent killer that eventually claimed his life. On October 5, 2015, Andrew Rubin died in Los Angeles of lung cancer at the age of 69. He was married once, but kept his personal life largely private, spending his final years in solitude. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at around $1 million, including a modest home in Los Angeles where he spent his time painting, writing, and living away from the limelight. George R. Robertson as Henry J. Hearst. George Ross Robertson was born on April 20, 1933 in Canada. At 51, he became a household name for his portrayal of Police Chief Henry J. Hearst in the Police Academy series. With a mix of grit and humor, he brought weight to the role, which ran in the first 6 films from 1984 to 1989. Hearst's grumpy exterior hid a heart of resignation, endearing him to fans for decades. After Police Academy, however, George R. Robertson took a quieter path, away from the noise of Hollywood. Despite appearing in 3 Oscar-nominated films, Airport, Norma Ray, and JFK, he remained a humble, hard-working supporting actor, more devoted to his craft than to fame. His personal life, however, told a more troubled story. 2 failed marriages kept him away from his family, especially in his later years. Relatives said he often lived alone in his Toronto home, haunted by a sense of abandonment from the industry that had once embraced him. Although his role as Hearst brought him public affection, it did not erase the emptiness that crept into his mind when the spotlight was turned off. George R. Robertson died on January 29, 2023, at the age of 89. His fortune was estimated at $1 million, mostly from real estate and film royalties. While his passing did not cause any drama or scandal, his tragedy lies in his silence, being remembered and forgotten at the same time as the line between fame and sleetude blurs in memory. Theodore Ross Roberts was born on June 30th, 1934 in Zanesville, Ohio. At the age of 50, he appeared in Police Academy in 1984 as Captain Reed. Although Ross's screen credits were brief, he was already a highly regarded actor, winning a Tony Award for his role as Lion in the Wiz, a role he reprised in the film version alongside Michael Jackson and Diana Ross. However, despite his stage success and powerful presence, his film career never took off as many had hoped. Raised by a nightclub singer mother, Ross was drawn to the spotlight of the West 5th Street nightclub scene at an early age. After completing his military service, he traveled across the United States singing, eventually landing in Los Angeles, where a small role opened the door to Broadway. With his powerful voice, charismatic stage presence, and undeniable charisma, Ross was often relegated to supporting roles, even when sharing the screen with legends like Richard Pryor and James Earl Jones. His personal life was equally tumultuous. A failed marriage left him withdrawn and emotionally distant. Friends spoke of the lavish parties he threw, but behind the excitement was a lonely soul who yearned for deeper recognition. In 1997, he returned to Dayton and opened a jazz club called Your Place, where he occasionally performed. In 1998, he suffered a stroke from which he never fully recovered. Ted Ross died on September 3, 2002, at Good Samaritan Hospital at the age of 68. His estate, estimated at $1 million, consisted largely of a small house in Dayton, where he quietly closed out a life once considered a star, but haunted by untapped potential. Deborah Lee Scott as Violet Fackler. Deborah Lee Scott was born on April 2, 1953 in Elizabeth, New Jersey. At the age of 31, she appeared in the 1984 film Police Academy as Violet Fackler, the fiery, eccentric wife of Douglas Fackler. Although it was a supporting role, the role made her a household name during the golden age of American sitcoms. Off-screen, however, Scott's life was filled with hidden wounds. After early success in Mary Hartman, Welcome Back, Cotter and Angie, she gradually gave up acting and worked as a talent agent in New York. Tragedy continued to strike. Her marriage to actor Jonathan Frakes ended, and she suffered the greatest heartbreak of her life when her fiancé, police officer John Dennis Levi, was killed in the September 11th attacks. According to her sister, Deborah Lee never recovered. She became heavily addicted to alcohol, became increasingly withdrawn, and struggled with severe depression. Just days after her 52nd birthday, Deborah Lee Scott died in her sleep at her home on Amelia Island, Florida. The official cause? Complications from cirrhosis of the liver, linked to years of alcohol abuse. Her estate was worth an estimated $300,000, a modest sum given the fame she once enjoyed. Hugh Wilson as angry driver Hugh Hamilton Wilson, Jr., born August 21, 1943, in Miami, Florida, was one of the most talented creators in television and film in the 1980s and 1990s. At age 41, he not only directed but also appeared briefly on screen as Angry Driver in Police Academy 1984, a comedy that became a worldwide hit and launched a long-running series. But that was only a small part of his remarkable journey. Wilson was the creator of the popular sitcom WKRP in Cincinnati, which received multiple Emmy nominations and a Humanitas Award. He also directed The First Wives Club, 1996, a landmark feminist comedy that grossed over $181 million worldwide and launched the careers of Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, and Diane Keaton. Behind that success, however, was a complicated personal life. Although he married Charter Smith in 1979 and had 5 children, Wilson had gone through 2 previous divorces, partly due to the pressures of fame and relentless work. He once admitted that the spotlight had left him emotionally drained, that his career had overshadowed his personal life. A devout Catholic, and later a visiting professor at the University of Virginia, he carried the silent burden of feeling he had missed out on so much precious family time. Wilson died on January 14, 2018 in Charlottesville, Virginia, at the age of 74 after battling lung cancer and emphysema. He left behind an estate worth about $2 million, including a modest home in Virginia that was his peaceful retreat after decades of navigating the high-pressure world of Hollywood. Joyce Gordon as Mrs. Thompson. Joyce Gordon, born March 25, 1929 in Des Moines, Iowa, is not only an actress but also one of the most outstanding female pioneers in the history of American television. At age 49, she appeared as Mrs. Thompson in Police Academy, 1984, a small role that helped define the film's signature comedy. But in a career that spanned decades, the role was a quiet note on a long journey of groundbreaking, often unsung achievements. In the 1950s, Joyce Gordon became the first woman to narrate a live television commercial, an act that was almost unthinkable for a woman at the time. She was also the first female announcer at a nationally televised political convention, and the first woman to serve as president of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, local chapter, leading the New York chapter since 1966. Far from being known as the Lady in the Glasses, her affectionate media nickname, Joyce became the familiar voice behind countless automated telephone recordings that millions of Americans hear every day from, "The number you have dialed is not in service. Please dial first the area code." She was also the English language voice for European film legends such as Claudia Cardinale and Jean Moreau, including in Once Upon a Time in the West. On the radio, she voiced Cherry in Mark Trail and Barbara Miller in My Son Jeep. Gentle yet enduring, she was an integral part of American audiovisual culture for decades. Joyce's private life was simple and thoughtful. She spent more than 50 years with actor Bernard Grant and raised 2 children. But her final years were spent quietly and somewhat forgotten. She died on February 28, 2020, at the age of 90, not in 2008 as some reports have erroneously reported, and left behind a massive cultural legacy, although her estimated net worth is only around $500,000. Despite all that she pioneered, contributed, and created, what is perhaps most upsetting is that the world only remembers her for her small role in Police Academy, Beth Amos as the little old lady.